Praise God from whom all blessings flow. Praise Him, all creatures here below. Praise Him above, ye heavenly host. Praise Father, Son, and Holy Ghost.
Oh, I like that version of the doxology. Let's stand and worship this evening. Soften our hearts and open our ears to hear it tonight. In Jesus' name, amen.
Say stronger, you are stronger. Sin is broken, you have saved me. It is written, Christ is risen, Jesus, you are Lord of all.
Maybe see.
Well, good evening. I forgot my portable mic, Dawn, so I had it on this morning, but didn't have it on. So, and now I just don't have it. So, it's no different than this morning. Let me give you some advice about sound guys, okay? I was a sound guy whenever I was in high school, growing up in church. Everyone blames the sound guy for everything goes wrong. 90% of the time, it's the guy that the sound guy is trying to make sound good, okay? So if anything ever goes wrong, you need to assume it's whoever's up here. That's good advice. You should write that down. That's good stuff. All right. Well, grab your Bibles. Turn to Ecclesiastes chapter 1. Ecclesiastes 1. We started last week a study of the book of Ecclesiastes. For some reason, a few weeks ago, driving around, just really felt convicted that this is where we ought to be. Typically, what we do on Sunday nights, as you know, is we like to extend what we talked about. This morning we talked about the issue of friendship, looking at David and Jonathan, and there's so much there. But I'm fighting the temptation to stay on that topic, but instead return back to our study of Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes chapter 1, we want to go down to verse 11. And although we looked at verses 1 and 2 last week, we want to read them again, just make sure that we're in the right context. We'll go down to verse 11. So with that said, if you will, stand with me out of reverence for God's holy word. The critic writes under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, verse 1, the words of the preacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What does man gain by all the toil at which he toils under the sun? Generation goes, generation comes, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises, the sun goes down, and hastens to the place where it rises. The wind blows to the south and goes to the north. Around and around goes the wind, and on its circuit the wind returns. All streams run to the sea, but the sea is not full. To the place where the streams flow, where they flow again. All things are full of weariness. A man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. What has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done, and there is nothing new under the sun. Is there a thing of which it is said, see, this is new? It has been already in the ages before us. There is no remembrance of former things, nor there be any remembrance of the latter things yet to be among those who come after. Let's go to Lord in prayer. Our Father, I ask that you would be so kind and open our hearts that we would receive your word, our mind that we would understand it, believing that your word is true and without error, and written with clarity for our obedience. Open our eyes that we would see your glory, our ears that we would hear and heed your word, our mouths that we would speak the truth of the gospel to one another in love, to ourselves in obedience, and to the world around us who so desperately needs to know the love of Jesus. Would you open our hands and our feet that we will go in obedience to Christ? As we struggle with these difficult issues of our life and reality, in so doing, may we discover the liberating truth of the gospel, that Christ has come to set us free, so life is not fleeting at all. And may I decrease so that you can increase. In the name of your Son we pray. Amen. See you. My wife and I went down memory lane the other day on Netflix and watched a movie from 1993. It's a film classic I'm sure you're aware of. The film was Groundhog Day. As you know, Groundhog Day is a film where Bill Murray, let me just add this quick footnote about Bill Murray. His son is a basketball coach. You know who his son is assistant? That's right, the Louisville Cardinals. Just want to throw that out there. That's free. You do with that whatever you want, but that's why Bill Murray is a Louisville fan, certainly no Kentucky fan. But nevertheless, Bill Murray plays Phil Connors. And Phil Connors plays a character who is a weatherman. He goes down to Pennsylvania to see the groundhog on Groundhog Day. What a weird tradition this is that we still recognize and put some insight into. Nevertheless, he goes down there and he doesn't enjoy it, and all of a sudden he finds himself stuck in a time loop. Every day he wakes up 6 a.m. It is still February 2nd, it's Groundhog Day. And this continues day after day after day, which means tomorrow is still today. And people say the same things. Everything is the same. And he is stuck in this perpetual time loop. And he does everything he can in order to get out of this time loop. At one point, he tells his producer what he is experiencing, and she doesn't believe him. After all, it sounds nonsense that the person you're talking to, you saw yesterday, February 1st, is trying to convince you he has lived February 2nd for at least a week now. And so he tries everything. Eventually, he decides to go out with a couple of guys he's met in a small town. And they're out, he's driving them home, and he asks a simple question. The question is, what would you do if there was no tomorrow? Now, they assume he's asking, if you knew you were going to die tomorrow, or you were going to make it through the night, what would you do today? That's what they assume that Phil Connors is asking them. But what he's really asking is if you could have the same day to do it over and over again, what would you do? And they conclude quite simply, quote, if there is no tomorrow, we can do whatever we want. There will be no consequences. And that is the scene where Phil Connors decides to drive the car on the railroad track. After all, what does he have to fear? Because he will still wake up in that bed and breakfast bed at 6 a.m. hearing the same song he's heard for weeks now. And in fact, that is how Phil Connors decides to live his life stuck in this time loop. He tries everything. Not only does he try to get out of himself and elicit help to get out of it, and that doesn't work, he adopts hedonism, he adopts nihilism, in fact, he commits suicide time after time after time again. He does everything he can to get out of this loop he finds himself in. Whether it be power or influence or pleasure or wealth or fame or work or laziness or love, yet he finds all of it to be exhausting and fleeting. It isn't until he discovers contentment does he ultimately find his way out of that time loop. Now, no doubt, you and I'm assuming, have never experienced such a time loop. If you have, we probably need to have, which should be a short conversation, probably a long conversation after the service, okay? Right? Because I'm going to joke and say, haven't we already had this conversation? No. But chances are you have felt that same sense of stuckness in life. Chances are you'll feel it tomorrow. I bet I already know how your day is going to go, perhaps. You'll wake up in the morning, when the alarm goes off, you'll hit the snooze button. You'll get up and you'll drag around the house. You fix the coffee, you brush your teeth, button your clothes, you kiss your spouse goodbye, you go to work. And there you will work until lunchtime. And if you're a state worker, it'd be a longer lunchtime than what you should probably have on taxpayer dollars. And then you'll go back to work, right? And then after that, you'll be yawning like crazy. And then you'll be thinking about all those 5-hour energy commercials you saw. And then you're going to keep working until it's time is over with. You're going to go home and you're going to have the same routine at home that you usually have. You're going to eat dinner right at a certain time. You'll watch the same show you always watch or whatever it might be. And guess what you're going to do Tuesday morning? You're going to wake up to the sound of the alarm. You're going to hit snooze and you're going to get up, fix the coffee, brush your teeth, get ready, go to work. And it's going to be the same cycle over and over and over again. In many ways, what this text talks about is, although we may not be stuck in a literal time loop like Phil Connors, we may feel when we look at our lives that very much so that we are stuck. That we are caught in a cycle, that we want to achieve things, we want to do things. What we discover is, in fact, life seems fleeting. He makes two arguments in verses 3 through 11. We looked at verses 1 and 2 last week. In verse 3 to 7, he argues that, or he shows us the fleeting nature of life. One of the things I've noticed is a major difference between my children and I is that they are perpetually bored. You ever notice this with kids? They're constantly roaming a house looking for something to do. toys to play with, games to invest in, friends to enjoy, parents to annoy, right? They're always on the go because they're always bored. I, on the other hand, always have this sense of being too busy. Got to work hard, finish projects, do chores, return calls, love the family, all of that. I feel like I don't have time to be bored. And yet it is frightful thought to look back in our lives whenever we are just busy all the time. Even during the pandemic, we're busy. We have nothing to do, but we're busy even during the pandemic. And to look back, you discover two things. One, time speeds along. Time just goes faster and faster as it goes. And secondly, to look back in your life and discover maybe I haven't accomplished as much as I thought I had. One of the things I've noticed the older I get is how every generation believes in itself that it is the solution to all the world's problems. Have you noticed this? You boomers out there, aren't you glad you fixed all the problems that your parents brought into this world? Like you. Aren't you glad you fixed all those problems? Isn't the world a better place than your generation? Hey, Gen Xers, we keep forgetting about you. Aren't you glad that you fixed all the world's problems? And don't you regret that the millennials are ruining it? Hey, millennials, how's that utopia coming along? Hey, Gen Zers, you're going to be exactly the same way. Have you noticed this pattern? I certainly have. Every generation finishes school, yet every generation gets a job. Every generation protests government. Every generation before long realizes that the world is as broken and fallen as it was when they first inherited it. Is this not vanity? Is this not fleeting? The opening question of verse 3 drives the rest of this passage. Note what he says. What does man gain by all the toil at which he toils under the sun? And this is his first argument following what we saw last week. Fleeting of all fleetings. Everything is fleeting. Vanity of vanity, says the preacher. All is vanity. After all, he says, what do we really gain from all the blood, sweat, and tears which falls under the sun? If you follow me on Facebook a few days ago, it came up on my memory. I wanted to GIF it, but I'm a millennial. I'm just not a cool millennial, so I wasn't able to do it, and quite honestly didn't think it was worth that much effort. But the video is of when my boy was just a little guy. He had his first bike, right? It was given to us. He was so excited. And we didn't live in a city where there's blacktop everywhere. We lived in the country with rocks and grass, right? It's about as good as it gets. And his back tire didn't get stuck. It was just caught in a sort of situation to where it could keep going, but the bike wouldn't move. His bike essentially became, by accident, a stationary bike. And I've got a video of him. You can go on my Facebook page, you can find him. And he's just a little guy, and he's just pedaling with all his guns. It's not going anywhere. I say, well, buddy, can you not go faster? And he just gives it all that he has. He says, I'm going pretty fast, Daddy. Yet he isn't going anywhere at all. It's the way we feel in life, isn't it? We go and we try and we effort and we give it all that we have, and we look back and we ask ourselves, have I really moved? What are we really gaining from all of this? Isn't that what he's asking? What does man gain by all the toil? That word gain is an interesting one. It describes what is being left over. What can we honestly say that we have and will accomplish in the end? We have profit at the end of it all. Remember that the critic here is looking death in the face. He's saying, look, death is coming. What have I truly gained in this fleeting life? We may believe that we are accomplishing things. That's why we go to work. That's why we invest in our children. That's why we take care of our marriage. Yet often we look back and feel trapped in a system by which there is no escape. And you'll notice in verse 4 and 7 that what makes it so fleeting is just precisely that. It's very brief. So he says, a generation goes, a generation comes, the earth remains forever. Sun rises, sun goes down, hastens to the place where it rises. The wind blows to the south, goes round to the north, round and round goes the wind, and on the circuit the wind returns. All streams run to the sea, but the sea is not full, to the place where the stream flows, where they flow again. My wife and I have been married, or not married, Wednesday we married 14 years. We've been together for 20. Now, we're 35 years old, which means we've been together for over half of our lives. And we'll both agree that the first 16 years of our lives went by a lot slower than the last 20 years of our life. And if you're doing the math, I realize I'm 35, not 36. 16 plus 20 is 36. Because someone's going to point this out. It'll officially be 20 years in September. We'll be 36 by then. I know someone's going to point that out. I may have gone to public school in Owen County, but I'm not that bad at math. But that is the way life is. And we've all experienced that feeling that life is running away from us. And to express this fleeting frustration, the critic turns to nature here in verses 4 to 7. In verse 4, one generation rises, another one falls while the earth remains the same, isn't it? Isn't that encouraging to you? Your generation will one day it will cease to exist. And guess what will still be here? Generations. The earth. Right? That is not going to change. And then the next generation is going to come. They're going to have all the promises there is to have. And guess what's going to happen? The world is going to pass them by. Verse 5, the sun will rise, the sun will set, but it doesn't move, does it? The wind blows to the south, it blows to the north, and around the world, yet it returns to just where it began, isn't it? Rivers continue to dip in the oceans, yet the oceans never seem to overflow. You ever consider that? That the streams will go into the oceans into the rivers, and yet the ocean never flows over. I think David was right in Psalm 103:15. He says, as for man, his days are like grass. He flourishes like a flower of the field. For the wind passes over it, and it is gone, and its place knows it no more. Is life not like that? Have you ever built a sandcastle on the beach? And you make it as fancy as you can make it. And there you may build it with a little child, your own children or grandchildren, something like that. And there you think, man, what an incredible scene this is. The beautiful weather, the sound of the waves, the view of the ocean, and the simple joy of building a castle out of sand. Yet before long, what's going to happen to that sand castle? The tide will rise and wipe it all away. Is life no different? You work hard, yet you are easily replaced. You raise children, they move out of the house. You love your spouse, yet death is still coming. You invest in markets that are perpetually volatile. Why is it that the world is constantly in flux, yet it seems as if nothing ever changes? No doubt everything is changing in one sense, but nothing is truly progressing. And that is the lie of secular progressivism. If you think that history is on your side, for example, or that it is evolving to some a perfect utopian world, then you are a fool of fools. History seems stuck on a loop. You can change the nations, and we've done that. You can change the technology, and we've done that. You can change the philosophy, and we've done that. But it is still the same old, same old. So not only does the critic highlight the fleeting nature of life, he, in verses 8 to 11, highlights the fleeting nature of pleasure. See, it is the nature of nature to be in constant motion without a moment of achievement. Notice what he says. In fact, we could go back to verse 5 to 7. We won't read it again. But notice in verse 5 to 7, he looks at nature there. The sun is rising and setting, yet it never settles. The wind blows, it's never satisfied. The rivers continue to move. Oceans are never full. The same, he argues, starting in verse 8, is the same for humanity. In verse 8, all things are full of weariness. A man cannot utter it. After all, he says, the eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. Now think about that. Do eyes ever get to the point where they say to themselves, eyes, I think we've seen enough? That is not in the sense that you feel like you've seen enough, right? But that your eyes physically can't see anymore. No, if you can keep them open, they can keep looking. Your eyes will never be satisfied with seeing. The same thing is with your ear, right? If your ear can hear, then, so long as it is open, you can keep hearing. It is never full to the max. So do eyes get to the point where they can see no more? Well, no, isn't that the addictive part of social media? Have you ever noticed that if you're on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, there never is an end to when you're scrolling? Doesn't it? That's on purpose because they don't want your eyes to leave your phone or your desktop. That's the whole point. That's social media addiction. It's the way it works, the way it functions. Do ears ever get to the point where they can't hear no more? Consider this. In the year 2019, we set a new world record. And you're going to be impressed with this. I know you are. Maybe you feel a little guilty of it. 2019 was a record-breaking year for the number of scripted television shows produced. Over 500 scripted shows were produced. This is all, of course, is of the streaming wars. Netflix versus Amazon versus Hulu. And now you got to add HBO Max to Stars. And eventually NBC is going to come out with the Peacock. Do that whatever you want. And then you got your free ones like Tubi and all the other ones, right? Then there's the YouTubes. And they're trying to get on the game. Apple's trying to get on the game. You literally could not, if you spent 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you could not watch every television show produced in a year's time. Just for that year. You just can't do it. You just can't do it. 500 shows, over 500 in a single year. This will give you statistically, because we all love to hear statistics. That number is up 7% from 2018. It is up over 52% from 2013. All within 4 years. And yet, how many of us still sit in front of our television and scroll through Netflix thinking there's nothing else for me to watch? We still do that, don't we? Because the eye is not satisfied with seeing, the ear is not satisfied with hearing. Humanity will never conclude we have enough. We'll never conclude we have seen enough. We'll never conclude we've heard enough. We'll never conclude we've experienced enough. Ernest Hemingway concluded, life is just a dirty trick, a short journey from nothingness to nothingness. Of course, he's saying that from the perspective not of faith, but of doubt. But it feels like that, doesn't it? Notice again verse 9 through 11. It's the perspective of the critic that we humans spend our lives trying to break out of the cycle of triviality. Yet, as the years pass, we realize it is a fool's errand. Look at verse 9. What has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done, and there is nothing new under the sun. One of the ways we try to break out of this cycle of triviality is through the pursuit of something new. There's a great commercial I saw years ago. I believe it was a Dell commercial. If any of y'all remember what a Dell computer was, whatever happened to those guys? And the commercial was a guy. He's in a convertible top car, and he's got his arms around his brand new PC, right? And he is just showing off to everybody. I got the brand spanking new PC, right? Look at me, yeah, look at me. He parks in front of his house, and there is a billboard where the guy is just finishing putting on the glue and putting up the sign, and it says, brand new computer for sale, right? He just brought it home, but there's already one that's newer to replace his old one now, right? That's the nature of technology. We've bought into the lie that if it's new, it must therefore make your life better. Right? We want to believe this. The critic's argument is there is, in fact, no such thing as new. I read an interesting book over this weekend called Lincoln's Melancholy, and it explores the depression episodes of that Lincoln struggled with throughout his life. And then there is an interesting nugget that Lincoln found a poem. He didn't know who wrote it until he was president. It was written by a guy by the name of William Knox. He was a Scottish poet, and it expressed this sense of triviality in life. And Lincoln felt it was a great way that expressed his own struggle with depression. That language wasn't really around then, at least not the way we use it now. But the idea of melancholy certainly was. And what Knox does is he takes Ecclesiastes 1 and he kind of rewords it for his audience. I love how he reworded verse 9. And Lincoln had this memorized. Quote, "The thing that hath been, it is that which shall be. And that which is done is that which shall be done. And there is no new thing under the sun." It's an interesting phrase, isn't it? Nothing new under the sun. Now, those who suggest the modern age is a new stage of human evolution are foolish, to be quite honest. Modern technology isn't new. It's just the reformation of the old, isn't it? I mean, think about it. I remember the first time I had a tablet in my hand and read a magazine. I thought, this is the way to go. You know what I was reading? A magazine that's been around for decades. That's not new. I don't know if you're aware of this. You perhaps have seen the meme where it's a bunch of people on a train all reading the newspaper and not interacting with each other. And the caption is, social media is going to ruin our relationships, right? I mean, that is, we're not talking to each other with our newspaper right in front of us, right? Technology hasn't changed who we are, hasn't changed the direction of humanity, hasn't made us better, right? Hasn't made us worse. We were already pretty bad. So to believe that the next new thing will solve us, or the next new thing will actually be new, is a fool's errand. We can try new governments. Those have been around for centuries, haven't it? And look at the French Revolution. We didn't like the old system, so we started another one. And guess what happened? That new one got replaced with a new one. You ended up replacing one tyrant for another one. We can try new explorations, right? Let's go to the moon. Let's go to Mars this time. Guess what human beings have been done since the founding of the world? Exploring. If you've been with us on Wednesday nights, you've seen Adam and Eve went east. Guess where Cain went? He went east, founded a city. Guess where his people went? They kept going east. Finding cities, developing civilization. Maybe we could try a new baby. Well, there's been plenty of them. A new revolution. Well, we've tried that experiment. Is this revolution any different than all the other revolutions you've ever tried? What makes us think this revolution will be any better than the other revolutions? That's his point. There's nothing new under the sun. That phrase under the sun is interesting too. There's significant debate as to how we should interpret it. Some says that the critic is saying those who live their life as if this world is the only thing that matters, they're under the sun. But those who live with their eyes on heaven, they're above the sun. Although that may be a helpful way of looking at it, I'm not sure the critic is saying that if you're a person of faith, these things don't apply to you. Because these things do apply to you, don't they? Don't you still feel like at times you're stuck in a rut? Don't you still feel at times you're going, you're moving, you're speeding along, and yet you're not getting anywhere? Don't you feel like that life is nothing but a cosmic treadmill and you're stuck? Of course. Just because you're a Christian doesn't mean all your problems go away. We have a place to take our problems and hope within our problems. But there's still tension here, I believe. If there is nothing new under the sun, he wants us to ask, then what are we striving for? That phrase is key. If you're looking for freedom from triviality, you won't find it under the sun. And this is why that the writer of Ecclesiastes wants us to consider death. Death is both haunting and liberating. It is haunting because it puts our lives in perspective. It is liberating because it frees us from the lies of this world. There is nothing new under the sun. No wonder then Jesus proclaims that all things are new in the new heavens, in the new earth, in the new Jerusalem. And there we will sing a new song and a new kingdom. You see, if there is life before death, then we can long for life after death. And if there is life after death, then we will therefore enjoy life before death. And all that is because God rules and reigns over everything. The critic regrets the stationary nature of life. Would you agree? We're just stuck in this cycle. But there is good news in that. This is one reason why I want to have a PowerPoint that I forgot to give. I read earlier Psalm 103:15. As for man, his days are like grass. He flourishes like a flower of the field. For the wind passes over it and it is gone, and its place knows it no more. That's depressing, isn't it? Only if you stop reading there. The psalmist continues in the next verse. But, what an important theological word that is again. How often do we come across that in the Bible? On the one hand, yes, our days are like grass. But the steadfast love of the Lord is from everlasting to everlasting on those who fear him. and his righteousness to children's children. To those who keep his covenant and remember to do his commandments, the Lord has established his throne in the heavens, and his kingdom rules over all. I'll tell you why that's good news. It's good news is because what we perceive as triviality, we need to learn to see God's providential grace. What seems like we are stuck in the loop, if all we see is what is under the sun and not him who reigns over the sun, we will be stuck in Groundhog Day, despite the date on the calendar. But if we love and lean into he who has a steadfast love from everlasting to everlasting, something that is truly immutable and immovable, then we can realize life may be fleeting, but it isn't in vain. Let's pray. Father, I ask that you would be so kind as to help us to wrestle with these difficult issues. It's easy for us to want to throw up our hands sometimes when things don't go our way, and frustration, and just being tired. But Lord, may we live under the banner of God's love, who is sovereign over the universe. Would you be so kind as to help us in that regard? Lord, may you convict us. May you move us to greater holiness. In the name of your Son we pray. Amen.
Let's stand and sing.
For being here this evening. Excuse me. You guys are getting out early. So I just feel wrong about that, to be honest with you. And Mark, did you fix that clock? I should have known. Boy, this morning I thought, man, I'm doing all right. And I realized it was caught up with the real watch. Give it a couple weeks. It'll be back to where I know y'all are trying to trick me. But good having you guys. It's still going to be light for like 6 more hours, so enjoy the rest of your day. And hopefully people are largely done with the fireworks, keeping your dog up at night. But thank you guys. Tomorrow at 2 o'clock, be here for prayer. Wednesday 6:30, we'll be starting Genesis 6. I don't know how far we're going to get. We got to talk about how to describe them things, the Nephilim, whatever it is. Those things are. And whatever I get wrong, Danny, you'll fix for me Wednesday night. So that's important. But do come out for that. Remind you about the ARC trip on the 24th of this month. Be sure to sign up. And we're going to order tickets the Monday before, so be sure to get your money in for that. That's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it. And with that, I'm going to ask if Don Douglas back there, will you close us in prayer?